Well, joining me is Mzobanzi Ndabana to go ahead and break this down for me. Mzobanzi, good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us. Mzobanzi, good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, Mzobanzi, just break it down for us what is currently happening between this union, which of course represents many of the vulnerable employees of our country, and these major security companies like the one of Fidelity.
Thanks. Look, a private sector workers' trade union and other unions are not satisfied about the issue of the exemption that was granted to associations, which is SANSIA and SASA. There are about 100 or more companies that are affiliated into this association. In terms of the collective agreement that was signed by employers association as well as the trade union, was that there will be a premium allowance that was due to be increased as of March 2021. But that increase was not effected by the employers who are affiliated to SANSIA and SASA. We only got aware of that when our members came to us and complained about the increase of the premium allowance. So that is why now we are not satisfied, because in terms of the collective agreement and also the policy in place is that before employer submit the exemption application, they have to allow trade unions and also workers to submit, or they must make sure that the unions and employers are consulted before that application has been submitted. So private sector, workers' trade union and other unions were not allowed that opportunity to make a presentation before they were granted or before they submitted the application for exemption. So it has got a negative effect on our members, because the increase that was supposed to be effected was not effected.
Mzobanzi, I'm looking at your statement now, and there's one that I want to focus specifically on, where you say, and I quote, certain employer organizations in the private security industry colluded with some deceitful unions to get themselves freed from honoring the 8% premium allowance increase that was due in March this year as agreed to with the bargaining council, close quote. Who are these deceitful unions?
We are referring to the unions that have seats in bargaining council. We believe that they are the unions that are sat down with these two associations and decided to grant them the exemption. We are also having members on companies that are affiliated to SASA and SASIA, but we were not given an opportunity, as other unions who do not have seats in the bargaining council, to be consulted. So those unions that have seats in bargaining council are the ones that we believe that they colluded with SASA and SANSIA.
Mzobanzi, I'm going to talk about the bargaining council, and of course you did write to the CEO of the bargaining council. What are you currently seeking right now from the bargaining council? Is it mainly to have a sense of recognition with regards to the problem that you and the union are currently having with the security companies?
Look, currently we do not have a seat in bargaining council, but we are party to a bargaining council. What we are challenging is the process that was followed by these two associations when they were applying for an exemption. We believe that all the trade unions that have members on SASA and SANSIA affiliate should have been consulted before the exemption was granted to these companies. So we are totally against the blanket exemption that was given to these companies.
Mzobanzi, I want to talk about COVID-19, and of course, COVID-19 has had a huge impact on a lot of our industries. Do you feel that the security industry, and especially the workers that the union represents, have been treated unfairly during the pandemic?
That's correct. They were treated unfairly because the security guards have been working. They were treated as essential services. They've been working day in and out, 24/7. They were working. So why now are they losing such a lot of money, you see, to the employers? Secondly, when employers are charging their clients, they charge all these monies, including the premium allowance. It's there. So one is asking himself that where is this premium allowance going to go if it's not going to be given to the employees who've been working all along?
Mzobanzi, do you feel, given what is currently happening with the pandemic, that the asking of the increases is a bit of a stretch considering where we are? Or do you feel that the workers, especially, as you mentioned, and rightfully so, are in an industry which it is considered an essential service, is rightfully for them, given where we are right now?
Look, I believe that security guards are entitled to this increase of a premium allowance because they are working 24/7. They are there even when other sectors are closed. So I'm asking myself, why was this exemption granted to these two associations? Because their employees or the employees of their affiliates were working. So why were they granted? Because if you are saying, if one would say that the COVID had a negative impact, it also has had a negative impact to the employees because they were working. So why now are they losing what is due to them in terms of the increase of the premium allowance? The worst part of it now, they also want to reduce the contributions of the Provident Fund from 7.5% down to 5% for each from the employer and the employee contribution. So to us, private sector and other union were saying no to these reductions, and also we're saying no to this exemption that was granted to SANSIA and also SASA affiliates.
Mzobanzi, have you, as obviously the union and the private sector workers trade union, sat down with these security companies and tried to work out something for the workers, especially at a time where, of course, protests, as we do enter level 4, and many protests are banned due to the country's COVID-19 restrictions. So has there been negotiations with the security companies to try and find an amicable solution to this?
There has been no engagement because it came to us as a shock. That is why we decided to write a letter to the Bargaining Council wanting to know all the processes that were followed. Because remember, when these applications or this application, it was submitted by the affiliate, by the associations, not the company individuals. So when we wanted to know from the companies, they said that they were granted an exemption. So that is why were so shocked and dismayed about this act.
Mzobanzi, of course, I want to now touch on the pensions and the medical aid. Now, of course, medical aid is a necessity for workers because given where they are, whether you're a security guard or you're somebody who's, of course, doing the armed response for these certain companies, has there been any communication as to why pension and medical aid, specifically medical aid, has been cut off for these workers?
Look, they are in the process of applying that to be cut off. And the reason behind that, they are saying the issue of the COVID, and of which we are totally against that because our members are working. And some of the union, they seem to forget the reason why we have retirement fund. If we are going to allow the companies to reduce the contribution that goes to a retirement fund, it's really going to harm our members in future.
Mzobanzi, what happens now? What happens if these security companies say, look, we don't want to negotiate, budgetary restraints have affected us because of COVID-19, there can be no salary expectation or salary hike, there can be no, we're going to go ahead and cut medical aid and pension. What is the private sector workers union going to go ahead and do in order to sort of continue to voice their opinion, or are they going to accept should, of course, the security companies come back with that ultimatum?
Look, we are going to go on top of the mountain and make sure that everyone supports private sector workers trade union and the other unions who are not satisfied, because in this sector, there is a price structure that is there guiding all the employers when they submit their tenders or their pricing. So if you go and check with the regulator, it still says 7.5% is a contribution to a provident fund, and also the premium is there. So why now are we going to say to the employers they must reduce what they are charging to their clients?
Mzobanzi, we'd like to thank you so much for making the time for us. Mzobanzi Ndabana, the General Secretary of the Private Sector Trade Workers Union. We thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. By the way, it's Mzobanzi Ndabana, not Ndaba.
Mzobanzi Ndabana, okay. Thank you so much for correcting me there. Mzobanzi, we thank you so much for making the time for us. We really do appreciate it, and all the best.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for giving us the opportunity to raise this serious problem in our sector.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Well, there we go. It's going to be a long stretch with regards to what happens with the Private Sector Trade Workers Union and these security companies, and whether they'll be able to go ahead and get their salary increase, and of course, whether they'll still be able to keep their pension and medical aid for especially the security workers, those who drive the armed response vehicles and of course patrol the areas, and the guys who of course stand as the security guards wherever it may be, whether it's shopping malls or any other private security places. It's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this. Of course, protests cannot happen at this very moment due to the level 4 COVID-19 restrictions. Well, after the break, we'll be crossing over to Palestine to speak to Abdullah Rifat about the protests that, of course, happened in Ramallah. Do stay tuned.